My name is Ivan. I am 58 years old, and for 40 of those years, my life was measured in acres and sunrises, in the weight of ripe apples and the quiet loyalty of good soil. The Oakhaven farm was not just my land. It was my fingerprint on this earth. I believed that love for land and family was the same kind of love. I was wrong, and I learned how wrong I was not in a courtroom, but in a hospital recovery room with the scent of antiseptic replacing the smell of hay. Before I tell you how a piece of my soul was traded for a plane ticket, I am curious. For those of you who have ever built something with your own hands, something you hoped would last, where are you listening from today? Let me know in the comments, and if you understand what it means to trust someone with your whole heart, hit subscribe. This story requires a steady nerve. The dawn at Oakhaven had a particular taste like cold water and promise. My day began long before the sun cracked the horizon over the eastern pine line. I would pull on my boots, the leather worn soft and shaped to my feet, and step out into the silence. The first chore was always the chickens, a flock of Rhode Island Reds that had been with me for years. They clucked softly in their coop, a sound that was more home to me than any music. After scattering their feed, I would walk the perimeter of the main apple orchard. The trees Macintosh and Honeycrisp were old friends. I would rest a hand on a gnarled trunk, feeling the slow, patient life beneath the bark. Some mornings there would be a deer at the edge of the field, or a red fox cutting a quick path into the woods. It was a life of quiet rhythms. I built this place from a tired, overgrown parcel. I was 18, with calluses already on my hands, and a stubborn dream in my chest. I worked 2 jobs in town to make the payments, clearing the land on weekends with an old truck and a borrowed chainsaw. Every fence post I set, every bucket of rocks I pulled from the field, it was all a sentence in a story I was writing with my life. The farmhouse I rebuilt after a fire, learning carpentry from library books. The soil, once clay-heavy and stubborn, I nursed into richness with compost and cover crops over a decade. This was not an investment. It was a covenant. My son Gregory learned to walk on that soil. His small hand would grip my finger as we went to check on the new lambs in the spring. I taught him how to saddle my old quarter horse Daisy, and his laughter would ring across the pasture when he got her to trot. He loved the farm as a boy loves his entire world. But the world got bigger. He went off to college, studied business. I was proud. He met Cassandra in the city, a sharp and stylish woman who worked in marketing. They would visit for holidays. Cassandra would compliment the scenery, call it quaint, and talk about the potential of the land with a gleam in her eye that I mistook for admiration. Gregory would nod along, talking about market trends and development values. I would smile, thinking he was just showing off his knowledge. I believed the farm's pull was in his blood, that he would come back to it. I told myself his city life was just a phase. Then the pain started. A tightness in my chest at first, like a belt being cinched 1 notch too tight during chores. It got worse. Doctor said a major artery was clogged, needed a bypass. The news was a cold stone in my gut. But not because of the surgery. It was because of the farm. Who would feed the animals? Who would run the irrigation? Who would be there? Gregory. God bless him. Stepped up immediately. "Don't worry, Dad," he said over the phone, his voice full of a confidence that soothed me. "I'll take a leave. Cassandra and I will come down. We'll handle everything. You just focus on getting better." The relief was a physical warmth. This was it, I thought foolishly. This hardship would bring him back to the land. I spent my last week before the hospital preparing lists, showing him the routines, introducing him to Franklin, my neighbor and friend of 30 years, who promised to keep an eye out. In a moment of profound, stupid trust, I gave Gregory a folder. It had copies of important papers, a key to the safe deposit box at the local bank, and a copy of my will. The original was with my lawyer, Walter. I told Franklin the night before I left, "He's got my blood in him. He'll be fine." I believed it. I believed all of it. The world came back in pieces. A blur of white ceiling tiles, the beep of a machine, a dull, deep ache in my chest. A woman's face swam into focus, kind eyes framed by silver-streaked hair. Her name tag said Diane. "Welcome back, Mr. Ivan," she said, her voice calm as a slow river. "Your surgery went perfectly." The first thing I asked, for my throat dry as dust, was not water. It was the time. I had been under for hours. My farm was unattended. Diane got me a phone. My hands were unsteady. I dialed the number for the farmhouse, the one I had known by heart since rotary phones. It rang and rang. On the 5th ring, Gregory picked up. "Dad." "Hey, you're awake." His voice was bright but distant, like he was speaking from the end of a long tunnel. I could hear music in the background, something with a pop beat. "Yeah, son, I'm here. Everything okay there?" "Everything's great." "No problems. Don't you worry about a thing. Just rest up." There was a laugh, Cassandra's laugh, sharp and close to the receiver. "We're just organizing some stuff, making it more efficient." I wanted details, about the rainfall, about the pump on the south pasture, about Daisy's hoof, but a wave of exhaustion hit me. Okay. Just call me if anything. We'll do Dad talk later." The line went dead. The days in the hospital bled into one another. Gregory's calls became shorter, more rehearsed. "All good," he'd say. "Franklin helped with the hay." When I called the house in the evenings, sometimes no one answered. I called Franklin myself. "Franklin, it's Ivan. How's it really going?" A pause on the line. "It's going, Ivan. Gregory's managing." Another pause. "Saw a fella in a real slick car out there the other day. Late model sedan. Gregory said it was a buddy from the city talking investments." "Investments?" I felt a flutter of unease. "Probably nothing," Franklin said, but his tone was flat. "You just get better. Don't borrow trouble." But trouble had already taken out a lease in my mind. During a physical therapy walk down the hall with Diane, I mentioned wanting to go home. She was supportive but firm. "Your body needs time to heal, Mr. Ivan. Rushing could set you back." That afternoon, Gregory called. When I said the doctors might let me out in a few more days, his reaction was strange. "Whoa, Dad, pump the brakes," he said, a forced chuckle in his voice. "The docs know best. You stay put." Besides, he lowered his voice to a conspiratorial tone. "We're doing a little project here, a surprise for you. Things are kind of torn up. You'll love it, but you need to give us time to finish." A surprise. The word should have warmed me. Instead, it felt like a door being closed gently in my face. Diane noticed my frown as she checked my vitals later. "Family can be a complicated medicine," she said quietly, not looking up from the blood pressure cuff. "What does that mean?" I asked. She met my eyes. "It means sometimes the people trying to help are the ones who end up causing the most stress. Just an observation." She gave my shoulder a pat and left the room. Her words stayed with me, mixing with Franklin's silence and Gregory's hurry, forming a cold, hard knot in my stomach that had nothing to do with surgery. The day I was discharged, the sunlight felt foreign aggressive. Franklin picked me up in his old pickup truck. He loaded my small bag, his movements slow and deliberate. We drove in a silence so thick you could chew it. He didn't ask about the hospital. He didn't point out the new foal in the Thompsons' field like he usually would. He just stared at the road, his jaw working. "Franklin," I finally said, as we turned onto the county road that led home. "What's wrong?" "Just tired, Ivan," he mumbled, but his knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Then we made the final turn. The gravel of my long driveway, crunching under the tires, was usually a welcoming sound. My eyes went automatically to the old oak tree that marked the entrance, and there, nailed to its trunk, was a sign. A professional, glossy sign. "Sold!" it screamed in bold red letters. Beneath it was the logo of a real estate company I didn't recognize, Heritage Development Group. My freshly mended heart, gave a sickening lurch. "What the hell is that?" The words came out a whisper. Franklin didn't answer. He just stopped the truck in front of the farmhouse. The porch, usually cluttered with my boots and a basket of kindling, was pristine. The front door flew open, and Gregory bounded out, a wide smile on his face. Cassandra followed, holding 2 glasses of lemonade, beaming. "Dad, welcome home." Gregory spread his arms as if presenting a prize. I couldn't move. I pointed a trembling finger at the sign. "Gregory, what is that?" His smile didn't waver. It grew. That's the surprise we sold it. Can you believe it? The offer was insane, almost double what this place is worth on paper. The world tilted. The words were English, but they made no sense. "Sold." "What? The farm, Dad? The whole thing? It's a done deal." He came over and clapped me on the back like I'd just won the lottery. The smell of his cologne, something expensive and citric, hit my nose, so alien against the familiar scents of dirt and grass. Cassandra handed me a lemonade. "We're using the money for the honeymoon we never really got," she said, her voice sweet as syrup. "A world tour, first class all the way. We were thinking Bora Bora, then maybe the Amalfi Coast." Gregory laughed, a full, hearty sound that echoed cruelly in the quiet yard. "Isn't it wild? People are going to be paying a fortune to vacation right here. They're going to build luxury cabins, a spa, the whole 9 yards. They'll be sipping cocktails where your old tractor used to sit." I heard Franklin get out of the truck and walk around to my side. I felt his presence like a bulwark. My knees were weak. I understood the words, but their meaning was a black hole, sucking in every good memory I had of this place of him. This wasn't a surprise. It was an execution. And my son was the cheerful executioner. I pushed past them, their smiles frozen in my peripheral vision. I walked into my house. It smelled of chemical cleaners. The worn armchair where I read my books was gone. The rug my mother had hooked was missing. The walls were bare. It was staged. It was already someone else's empty shell. I made it to the kitchen sink and gripped the cool porcelain, staring out the window at the barn. My breath came in short, painful hitches that pulled at my surgery scars. Behind me, I heard Gregory's voice, still buzzing with excitement, explaining the closing timeline to Franklin, who grunted in monosyllables. The laughter had not left his voice. He was laughing. He was laughing. That night, I lay in my stripped-bare bedroom on a mattress that wasn't mine. Sleep was a distant country. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the red "sold" sign. I got up and wandered. The moon was high, casting the farm in monochrome silver and deep shadow. I walked to the orchard. I pressed my forehead against the cool, rough bark of the first Macintosh tree I ever planted. I could hear Gregory's 6-year-old voice. "Is it gonna have apples tomorrow, Daddy?" I walked to the pasture. The grass was high. Daisy was gone. Gregory had told me casually over a tense, silent dinner that he found her a good home, because caring for her was too much with everything else going on. I sat on the fence, the wood smooth under my palms, and the loss finally broke over me. It wasn't just anger. It was a grief so profound, it was silent. It was the death of a future I never realized I was counting on. The death of the boy I raised. By first light, a cold clarity had replaced the grief. This was not a mistake. This was a plan. I needed to see the machinery of it. I went to my study. The filing cabinet was unlocked and nearly empty. The folder I had given Gregory was gone. My copy of the will was gone. I found a few scattered papers in the trash, preliminary sketches of landscape designs, emails printed out discussing water rights and zoning variances, dates from months ago, before my surgery. I called Walter, my lawyer. His voice, usually warm, was guarded and thick with regret. "Ivan, I was going to call you. Gregory came to see me. He had a durable power of attorney, the one you signed before your operation. He said you'd had a change of heart, wanted to liquidate everything for medical bills and to simplify your life. He wanted to amend the will, make himself the sole immediate beneficiary." My blood went cold. "I never said that, Walter." "I know that now." Walter sighed, a sound of deep professional failure. He was very convincing, and the paperwork, it seemed in order. But something felt off. I stalled. I told him I needed to speak with you directly after your recovery. He wasn't happy. Then last week he informed me the property was under contract with Heritage Development. He said you'd signed the listing agreement and the offer papers yourself via the power of attorney. He said it was a done deal. "Is it?" I asked, my voice barely my own. "Maybe not," Walter said slowly. "The power of attorney you signed was for financial management during your incapacitation. It's shaky ground for the sale of a primary residence and land of this value without explicit documented consent. And the original will, the one leaving him the farm after your lifetime with a life estate for you, is still valid. He doesn't have that. He has a copy. I have the original." A tiny, fragile flame sparked in the darkness. "So he can't sell it." "He thinks he can. He may have even convinced a title company he can. But if you're contesting it, if you're saying you didn't authorize a sale, then we have a case. A very messy one, but a case." Later that morning, Gregory and Cassandra were in the living room packing designer luggage. A brochure was open on the coffee table. I picked it up. Oakhaven Estates, an exclusive sanctuary. It showed digital renderings of modernist cabins, an infinity pool overlooking my pond, a yoga pavilion in the middle of my south pasture. It was glossy, soulless, and complete. Gregory saw me looking. "Pretty amazing, huh?" They really saw the vision. I looked from the brochure to his face. The last vestige of parental love I had been clinging to evaporated. I was looking at a stranger, a businessman, who saw me as an obstacle that had been conveniently removed. "You planned this?" I said, my voice quiet and steady. His smile finally faltered, just for a second. "Dad, don't be dramatic. This is an opportunity for everyone. You'll be set for life financially. No more struggling with this place. The will, I said, ignoring him. "The one leaving this to you. You had a copy. You knew." He shifted his confidence, returning with a defensive edge. "An old will. You changed your mind. The new arrangement is better." There was no remorse, only impatience. The high-stakes game he was playing was more real to him than the 40 years of my life on that land. That was the moment. The silent, shattering climax. Not a shout, but a quiet internal collapse. The father in me died right there. What was left was just a man on his own land, fighting for its life. I met Walter and Franklin at Walter's office in town. The three of us sat around his old oak desk. Walter laid it out. "The closing is scheduled for Friday at the title company. They think it's routine. Gregory will be there representing you via the power of attorney. The buyer's rep will be there. A notary." "So we stop it," Franklin growled. "Not exactly," I said. The idea had been forming all night, cold and precise. "We let it happen." They both stared at me. I continued. "If we stop it now, it's a fight. He'll claim I'm confused post-surgery, that I authorized it. It'll be my word against his and a stack of papers he forged or tricked me into signing. It'll drag on. The land will be in limbo." I looked at Walter. "But if we let it get to the point of closing to the final signing, and then I am there in person of sound mind to explicitly refute his authority and the validity of the sale." Walter's eyes lit with a grim understanding. "We catch him in the act, in front of the notary and the buyer's representative. Fraudulent representation. It becomes a criminal matter, not just a civil one. The deal dies on the table, and Gregory is exposed." "It's a risk," Franklin said. "Staying quiet is a bigger one," I replied. I felt calm. It was the calm of having nothing left to lose. Walter set the plan. He would call the title company, saying that per his clients, my wishes, he would be attending the closing to ensure everything was in order. He would insist I be present to observe, citing my recent health as a reason for extra caution. He would frame it as a formality. The next 2 days I played my part. I was the defeated, tired old man. I stopped asking questions. I nodded blankly when Gregory talked about the closing. "I just want it over with," I mumbled to him on Thursday evening. He patted my shoulder, his relief palpable. "It's for the best, Dad. You'll see." Friday morning, I put on a clean shirt. Walter drove me. We entered the small, sterile conference room at the title company. Gregory was already there, looking sharp in a suit, chatting amiably with a man in a tailored blazer, the buyer's representative. A stack of documents sat on the table. A middle-aged woman with a notary stamp smiled nervously. Gregory's smile tightened when he saw Walter and me. "Dad, Walter, glad you could make it. This is just a formality." We sat. The notary began explaining the documents, deeds, affidavits, disclosure forms. Gregory guided me through where to observe. He pointed to a line on the final purchase agreement. "This is just the final acknowledgement, Dad. Makes it official." The room was quiet. The buyer's rep slid the paper toward me. Gregory placed a pen in my hand. Just right there by the X. I looked at the document. I looked at the eager, avaricious face of the buyer's rep. I looked at the notary who was just doing her job. Then I looked at my son. His eyes were bright with imminent victory. I placed the pen down carefully on the table. The click was loud in the quiet room. I smiled, a small, tired smile. Then I asked my one question. My voice was clear, calm, and it filled the space. "Gregory, before I sign, can you confirm for everyone here that you've thoroughly reviewed Clause 7B, the section on legal liability for fraudulent misrepresentation and elder financial exploitation under this state's statutes. The color drained from his face so completely he looked like a black and white photograph. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Walter didn't miss a beat. He opened his briefcase and placed 2 documents on the table. The first was my original executed will. The second was a copy of the limited power of attorney. As Mr. Ivan's attorney, Walter stated formally, I must inform you that this power of attorney does not grant authority for the sale of primary real property without a separate explicit court order, which does not exist. Furthermore, the seller of record Mr. Ivan is present and of sound mind, and he does not consent to this sale. This transaction is based on a fraudulent premise. The buyer's rep shot to his feet, his face flushing with anger. What is this? We have a contract. You have a contract with a man who had no legal right to sell, Walter said. I suggest you direct your concerns to him. He nodded at Gregory, who was staring stunned at the original will, seeing his name not as the immediate owner, but as a future heir with conditions. The meeting dissolved into chaos. The buyer's rep stormed out, threatening lawsuits. The notary gathered her things and left without a word. Gregory finally found his voice, a sputter of outrage. You set me up. This is my inheritance. I stood up, my body aching, but my spirit steady. No, Gregory, I said, looking at him not as my son, but as the adversary he had chosen to become. That was your inheritance. You just traded it for a handful of nothing. The farm is not yours, not anymore, not ever. I walked out of that room with Walter. I did not look back. The fallout was swift and quiet, the way things are in a small town. The story spread. Gregory and Cassandra left that same day, their suitcases still packed for a honeymoon that would now never happen. I heard through Franklin that they moved back to the city, their marriage strained under the weight of public shame and financial ruin. There were no lawsuits. The development company, faced with the prospect of a fraud case, walked away. The red "sold" sign was taken down, but the victory was ashes. I had my land back, but my home was a crime scene of betrayal. I couldn't sleep in that house. Every room echoed. I spent my days working the land mechanically, the joy gone from it. The silence was deafening. One afternoon, Franklin found me staring at the pond. You can't live like a ghost on your own land, Ivan, he said gently. I don't know how to live any other way now, I admitted. It was Diane, the nurse from the hospital, who unintentionally gave me the idea. She'd heard the story everyone had, and she stopped by one day with a casserole, an old country gesture of support. We talked on the porch. She worked part-time with a veterans outreach program. They talk about finding peace, she said. A lot of them are from rural places. The city eats at them. They miss space, simple work. Her words sat with me. That night I looked at Oakhaven not as my past, but as a piece of land with a future I could still define. I called Walter again. I sold a 20-acre parcel on the western edge land that was mostly wooded and not part of the core farm. It was enough. With that money and my own stubborn hands, and with Franklin's tireless help, we began. We built a small, accessible cabin for myself near the main house. We renovated the big old barn into a community space. We created raised garden beds, wide pathways, a quiet grove with benches. I reached out to the veterans group Diane mentioned. I called the local youth center in the city. We called it Oakhaven Legacy Gardens. It wasn't a farm anymore. It was something else. A place where a young man from the Marines, his hands shaking slightly, could learn how to plant a sunflower seed and watch something grow without demands. A place where a group of wide-eyed kids from downtown could run through a meadow, their laughter a new kind of music for the old trees. I taught them about soil, about compost, about the patience required for growth. In teaching them, I was reteaching myself. The work was hard. The memories still ambushed me. Some nights the loneliness was a physical weight. But other mornings I'd have coffee with Franklin, or Diane would bring pastries from the town bakery, and we'd plan the next planting. The grief for my son didn't disappear, but it changed. It was no longer a sharp knife twist. It was a weathered stone in my pocket, familiar and heavy, but just a part of the load I carried. Healing doesn't come with a certificate. It comes with the slow turning of seasons. The first apples from the old orchard after everything happened were the sweetest I'd ever tasted, and also the most bittersweet. I learned that legacy is not about what you leave behind, but what you grow in the hearts of others. I learned that sometimes the most powerful action is not a roar of anger, but a quiet question that echoes with truth. I had to lose the son I thought I had to find the man I still could be. The land forgave nothing because the land never judged. It simply waited for me to remember that I belonged to it, not the other way around. Oakhaven is quiet now, but it is never silent. The wind in the apple trees sounds different these days. It sounds like a new beginning grown from very old roots, and for the first time in a long time, that is enough. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever faced a betrayal that forced you to rebuild from the ground up, I'd like to hear from you. Where did you find your strength? Share your thought in the comments below. Sometimes just knowing you're not alone is the first step toward your own peace. If you found value in this journey, please give this video a like. It lets me know these stories matter. Subscribe to the channel for more tales of real-life hard choices and quiet resilience. And if you know someone who might need to hear this today, share it with them. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of this community. May you find peace with your own history and courage for your own new beginning.